We can add beer to the list of things that millennials have cruelly murdered, including diamonds, golf, marriage, Applebee's, and essentially everything good and holy in America. That's right. Another
I'm
brilliant
proud of the
piece.
Applebee's one.
We are
I'm
proud of the
proud of that
Applebee's
one.
one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm proud of golf. You know why? Because I have a terrible swing.
You know what? I do not like golf either, Jeff. Whenever someone asks me what I think about golf, I say watch the movie Falling Down or see the George Carlin bit, and that's what I think about golf.
Yeah.
Not a
So
fan.
ironically, I bludgeoned golf with a golf club. So that's the height of irony in this one.
That's a
But
fuck of a weekend.
so what I'm saying is I'm pointing to another brilliant piece in Business Insider that's titled "Millennials Are Killing Beer." Oh, for Christ's sakes! Now, in this article, they cite CNBC and a Goldman Sachs survey that recently downgraded both Boston Beer Company and Constellation Brand on the data that younger consumers, they're just not drinking as much alcohol as older people. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because we know alcohol is kind of bad for us, and marijuana is actually better when compared to
Hmm.
alcohol. And that in a lot of places that it's starting to get legalized recreationally. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. And that the younger people who do drink, they prefer wine and spirits.
Hmm.
Uh, Chief analyst Freda Zhu wrote, "We view the shift in penetration and consumption trends as driven by a shift in preferences in the younger cohorts." And let me just say, penetration. I'm a child. Now, beer penetration fell 1% from 2016 to 2017. While both wine and spirits were unmoved, according to the ratings, Goldman Sachs now expects the overall beer market to decline by 0.7% in 2017. 0.7% is killing the beer industry.
Hmm.
Somebody tell them that millennials, we have had a 20% decrease in our wages from one generation to the other. We make 20% less than our parents did. How is that not considered killing the millennial generation? I'm kind of curious about
Right.
that.
Well, not only that, but it's the millennial generation that's kind of, no, I mean, it's not exclusively millennials, but a lot of these microbrews and stuff like that, those are like millennials that are starting those businesses. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I mean, there's in my hometown, for instance, of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there's a bunch of like old fire halls that have been closed down for years that are now microbrews that a bunch of 20s and 30s young adults started. So yeah, I think that's like I think this analysis overlooks a couple issues where it's like, well, millennials are actually responsible for the craft beer craze because that's us that are flocking to it. Because like another thing that people claim, they'll say, we're like, well, millennials are ruining beer because a lot of beer enthusiasts are really into the IPAs right now,
Mm-hmm.
and the general beer drinker is kind of off put by the IPAs right now. So all these microbrewers are making these IPAs, and people aren't migrating to them. And it's like, well, wait a second. They wouldn't be making them if there wasn't some group that was consuming them, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, like a lot of microbreweries that succeed, they do so because they have a lot of different options. So if an IPA is not your thing, then you got to talk to, the person that's at that microbrew because they're not going to be there if they don't know beer. And you got to find what's more yours. I mean, I'm not a big IPA guy, but I like a lot of wheat beers.
Mm-hmm.
I like a lot of Hefeweizen style beers. I know what I like, and I'll ask questions, and I'll experiment, right? And so yeah, I think that anyone claiming the millennials are killing the beer industry, it's I don't know how you can make that claim. I mean, given the participation we have in the beer industry. So,
Well,
yeah, I think that's kind of a weirdly sourced analysis to make.
yeah,
And by weirdly sourced, I mean incomplete and wrong.
it's just another example of we see a downtrend like millennials decide to make a different choice. Like, oh, we don't want to drink Natty Ice anymore or Natty Light, which is fucking terrible. We don't want to drink that stuff. We actually want to drink something that's decent. And they're like, oh my God, can you see the They're just killing the beer industry by a 0.7% drop. You've got to be shitting me.
Yeah, and I'd be curious how exactly they measured that. Yeah, I mean, maybe if they're measuring it in just natty, like the large breweries, like
Like,
the
yeah.
the domestic piss water market. Sorry, I couldn't come up with a better. Then yeah, we're probably hurting it because yeah, we're not drinking that stuff as much because you know we're migrating more towards the microbrews and stuff
Yeah,
like
well,
that. You
I
know,
mean,
we're
especially in
which.
bigger places, right? Where there's a lot of
Mhm.
millennials present, like in the bigger cities, LA, for example. That's probably got a really healthy microbrewery market.
Yeah, we do, man. And I mean, pretty much all the cities in the countries do at this point. I mean, when I
Mhm.
was in Nashville, there was Yazoo, which was it was pretty much all millennials running
Yeah.
that place, um, and still is to my knowledge. So, and that's also a reflection of economic times. I mean, usually in tough
Yes.
economic times, uh, stuff like pre-prohibition style drinking, like old fashions, speakeasy type stuff, decent wines, craft beers, that makes a resurgence. And I think it's because people's leisure dollars are a bit strapped. So they're gonna be like, well, if I'm gonna go out and drinking, I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna really
Yep.
enjoy it. You know, I'm not just gonna, throw back a bunch of shitty domestic brews and get hammered. I'm gonna drink well because I only get to do this so much.
Me, like,
So yeah, I mean, I think to point the finger at millennials is just straight up wrong.
well, it's funny. I live in an area where that's what people do, right? That's what a lot of people do. They just go and they drink, again, Natty Light. I mean, that's the beer of choice that I see around here. Even though Michigan does have a strong, at least from my point of view, and maybe I'm not correct in assuming this, but there's a lot of microbrews here in Michigan that are great.
I'm
Uh,
pretty sure, and I mean, don't quote me on this, but like someone can double check me in the comments or something. But
mhm.
I want to say that Grand Rapids has among the most microbreweries of any other town, like per capita
Right,
or whatever.
right.
I think Grand Rapids is either like it's definitely up there, and I think it might be like first. I think it's like Grand Rapids and like Asheville, North Carolina. A
Mhm.
lot of these like kind of smaller collegey type towns. Those are the ones that have the most like per capita or whatever out of any other place in the country. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely safe to say, whether it's number one or not. I'm not
Right.
quite sure,
But it's
but
up there.
it's up there, and it's very safe to say that yeah, Michigan has a very healthy microbrewery scene or economy or however you want to put it.
Right. But I think it's in the more rural areas. I think that I don't see a lot of, you know, people carrying cases of, microbrewed beer. It's more like
Right.
we're just going to get the cheapest shit that we can and get fucking hammered.
Right.
But that's
Yeah.
that's the area that I grew up in, and that's my whole experience with that. But I've always been kind of a poor guy, so what can I say? Being in that area. Now, you did mention something that's interesting. It's a product of our economic times, right? Well, uh, interesting thing about this is that I know you were here when we talked about avocado toast, and I
Yeah.
remember that was fun. Well, it turns
Yeah, it
out
was
that
fun.
it's not because we're the death of beer. According to them, a 0.7% decrease is somehow the death of beer. It's not because of avocado toast. There's a reason that, or I should say, a recent study by the Federal Reserve found that student loans are actually one of the reasons that millennials aren't buying homes, and consequently, all these other things. For example, diamonds, or they're getting married, or not as much beer, or not going golfing as much, is because we have all this money that we owe for our education.
Hmm.
Add, low wages to the mix, higher costs of living, especially in areas that actually have good jobs. And, if you look at all those factors together, you might actually figure out that, oh, right, we're kind of fucked. And we've had to change our habits to suit our new economic reality, which means
Hmm.
no diamonds, no owning homes, you know, putting off getting married and not going fucking golfing and maybe not, buying as much beer. Maybe has something to do with it.
Yeah, but it's always easier to scapegoat the younger generation. I mean, this is nothing new. It's just
Yeah.
we've been fucked over particularly hard. That's not to say that the Gen Xers didn't get the short end of the stick too. They did, but I would say it's gotten even worse and worse, and it's to the point of crisis. But, you know, if you're an older generation, you either can recognize that crisis or you can, you know, scapegoat the younger generation. And there's always a tendency to do the latter. And there's a bias in the media to do the latter because all of these for-profit cable news companies, they know that the average age of their demographic is about 61 years old plus. So that's who they're trying to appeal to and keep smiling.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.